Okay, I'm back, and now we want to continue to talk about refraction. So, what we've been talking about so far is refraction going through a flat surface. So, the wall, for example, of an aquarium is a flat surface. So, the light is bent when it goes through it at a certain angle. Well, we could take a flat mirror and we could bend it into a concave or convex mirror. Well, theoretically, we could take a piece of plastic that's flat and we could bend it, and so we could cause the light to bend differently, to be refracted differently as it goes through that material. However, normally we don't bend the plastic. What we do is we carve it. And there's two shapes that we can carve it into. So we can carve it into a converging lens or a diverging lens. So if you don't know the shapes of those lenses, you need to go to Google and then find an image of them so that you can tell what the shapes are, because you're going to be tested on it when you do your laboratory exam. You need to be able to tell me which lens shape goes with which word, for example. And for the same thing for the mirrors. So you need to be able to recognize a concave and a convex mirror. So I don't expect you to have the diverging lens, but I do expect that you have a converging lens, otherwise known as a magnifying glass. You're going to need two of them for this. So if you don't have two, you could go to Walmart and probably get a cheap magnifying glass for $1, and then you got one that you can just use around the house for that. But you are going to need two converging lenses for this experiment. Okay, it says to take your magnifying glass, which is your converging lens, and you're going to look at a page in your textbook through the converging lens, and what does the print look like? So what does a converging lens do to the image of the print? Okay, now if you have a diverging lens, that's great, because you could also repeat the experiment with the diverging lens, but I don't expect you to do that. So don't worry about using the diverging lens. Okay, on part 3, on diffraction, we are going to have a separate lab on spectroscopy where we talk about what diffraction is. So do not bother to do part 3 of the lab. Okay, so now we can go down to the next part of the lab, which is where we're going to make a telescope. We're going to make a refracting telescope. Now you can also make a telescope using mirrors, but we're not going to do that. So the telescope that we're going to make is the same kind of telescope that Galileo used 400 years ago. So you're going to get two magnifying glasses, and hopefully they are not going to be the same strength. So you need one that has maybe a 5 power, and then another one, maybe it's got a 10 power. It doesn't make any difference what the magnification of the magnifying glasses is, but I would like for them to be different so that they have different magnifications. If you have to, you can go with two magnifying glasses that have the same magnification. So you're going to take these outside on a sunny day, and then let's say that the sunlight is over here, and then you're going to hold up the magnifying glass, and let's say that this is the ground, and you're going to move it back and forth until you get a very bright spot of light down on the ground. Okay, then you're going to measure the distance in centimeters with a ruler. Now, if you have to, use inches if that's all that you got to work with, but I would prefer using metric units. So go ahead and use inches if you can, or centimeters if you can, inches if you have to. But measure the diagonal distance. So you don't want to measure this distance, and you don't want to measure this distance to where the bright point of light is. You want to measure the diagonal distance down to the ground. Okay, then you're going to repeat it with the other magnifying glass so that you're going to have two distances down to the ground. Now, what you have just done is you have measured the focal length of your lens. So wherever that light made the bright spot on the ground, the distance from the magnifying glass to that point is going to be called the focus of the lens. And hopefully you got two different focuses. Alright, now you're going to go back inside and you're going to construct your telescope by taking one of the magnifying glasses and you're going to hold it up to your eye. That's going to be the eyepiece. Okay, the eyepiece goes up against your eye. Then you're going to take the other one and you're going to hold it out like this, and the idea is to be able to see something through your telescope. So you're going to have to move this one back and forth. Don't move the eyepiece, so keep it where it's at, and then move this one back and forth until you get an image of something that's very far away. Okay, now you need to have somebody measure the distance between the two lenses, because you're going to be pretty busy with your two holding on to these two things, so you're really going to need somebody else to help you, and you're going to measure the distance between the two lenses. Okay, and then you're going to put all of that information into the chart that is down there. Okay, so you are going to fill in the column that says outside measured focal length in centimeters for converging lens 1 and for converging lens 2. Okay, there is no converging lens 3. Now, if you want to, go get another magnifying glass, and you could do it. So you could do it like it says in the lab, but you don't have to. So you're going to have two converging lenses, and then don't do the next column. So the one that says distance from lens to object, don't fill that one in. Don't fill in the column that says distance from lens to image. Don't fill in the calculated focal length if needed. And also don't fill in the column that says actual focal length. So the only thing that you need to fill in on that chart is the focal length of each of your two lenses. Okay, so in my next video, we're now going to calculate how far apart the two lenses should have been.